Welcome to the All Kids Can podcast, dedicated to supporting parents on their journey to nurture happy, successful children in every facet of life, particularly their journey through their education. Whether you're navigating the complexities of a recent diagnosis or you're finding that your child is struggling to have success with their learning, this podcast is for you. As a parent, you have incredible power and influence in your child's life. And with the right knowledge and strategies, you will be empowered to guide your child towards their best life. I'm your host, Christy Howarth, accredited dyslexia therapist, special education teacher, family coach, and mum of two brilliantly neurospicy kids of my own. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to episode number 2 of the All Kids Can podcast. I am here today to let you know about something that you need to know about if you have a child that is struggling with reading or with spelling. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't know about, and I'm including teachers in that bracket because as a teacher, I had no idea about this. I had no idea that we needed to have some pre-reading and pre-spelling skills established and developed within our children before they can have proper success at reading and spelling. And what I'm talking about here is called phonological and phonemic awareness. Now, that sounds like a big, complicated term, but it's really just the ability to understand how our words and how our language is broken up into individual sounds, 44 approximately to be exact. So our whole language is made up of just 44 sounds. So what we need to do to prepare kids to read and spell is to make sure that they have phonological and phonemic awareness skills developed within that part of their brain. So some kids will almost naturally be able to pick up these skills along the way, and they're the kids that don't have any difficulties with reading and spelling. However, the kids that we know, the kids that have poor phonological processing capacity within their brain, require those skills to be strengthened explicitly before they start reading and spelling successfully. So let's have a little bit of a snapshot look into what kind of skills and what kind of activities that we can do with kids to be able to start to strengthen that part of the brain so that they can find reading and spelling easier. Okay, so first of all, we're going to start off with phonological awareness. So you can think of this as a little bit of an umbrella term, and phonemic awareness is going to come underneath that umbrella. But first of all, we're going to start off with the premise that these skills are like a hierarchy. It's like if we're thinking of a ladder, we have to get up on that first rung. Okay, and that first rung is rhyme. So we need kids to be able to understand how rhyme works. We need them to be able to distinguish whether words rhyme or not. And we need them to be able to produce rhyme as well. That's the first step, if you like, on the ladder. The next step is words. Kids need to be able to understand that words are separate entities within a sentence. So just a quick story. I used to play I Spy with my child, and we used to do sounds. So I said to him, he was about 4 at the time, and I said, I spy with something that starts with ah. And he said to me, a rock. Absolutely cute and gorgeous, but also a huge indicator that he wasn't understanding that a and rock were two separate words. So that's a classic example. We need kids to be able to understand that words are separate within a sentence. I run to the shop. I run to the shop. 5 words within that sentence. Okay, and then if we're going to step up again on that ladder, the next skill we need to hit is syllables. Kids need to be able to understand that a word is broken into chunks or syllables. So we say a syllable is the beat of a word. So when you teach your child this, you can actually have a lot of fun with it. In fact, all of these activities should be fun with your child. Some of the most precious, beautiful memories that I have with my kids is playing these games and helping them understand speech sounds within words. I have some of the fondest memories of doing this, and we would just do it as the kids would run into bed with us in the mornings and wake up, and then we would start playing these games. Maybe it was a rhyme game, and I would say, "Hey, can you think of a word that rhymes with cat?" Cat, mat. Can you think of another one? And I would do lots of modeling. And it was a huge connector for us when they were little. And little did they know, I was actually preparing them to be successful with reading and spelling later on. Okay, so let's get back to, we are on the rung of that ladder when we're talking about syllables. So when we talk about syllables and we're playing with kids and we're teaching them how to work with syllables or how to break words down into syllables, we can actually, one of my favorite ways is to teach them how to talk like a robot because they love it. And remember, this has got to be fun. So if I said, hey, let's talk like a robot and say the word computer, we would go computer. Another example might be, hey, let's break up this word. Now be careful, this is a really short word because kids start to stretch one syllable words out, and we want to predict that and to make sure that they don't do that. So you go, ready? Dog, dog. And so that's just one syllable. So once kids have the ability to break words down into syllables, we can step up on the next rung. And the next rung is initial sounds. So we need kids to be aware that words start with sounds. And we're not worrying about any other sound in that word. We are only thinking about the first sound to start with. So we would play games like, here is a cat. Can you think of another word that starts with k, like cat, and you can overemphasize? And then they would say, ooh, what about candy? Yes, candy and cat start with the same sound. So be really explicit about it. Model it heaps until they start to understand what is expected of them to be able to identify or segment that first sound within words. Okay, so the next one, we're going to step up on the ladder again, and we're going to be talking about this time blending sounds together. Now, this is one of my favorites because I call it my secret code. So when I say to kids, hey, let's play a game, can you work out my secret code? K, a, t. Can you put all of those sounds together to blend and find out my secret code? K, a, t. Cat. And again, I would do heaps of modeling to start with, to show them what's expected of them and to show them how to blend sounds together. Keep it short to begin with. In fact, you can start with 2 sounds. Am is the word. So that is blending sounds, and that is a direct pre-reading skill. Because if you're thinking about when your child has a word to read, and say we have letters involved, because we're not working with letters with this phonological and phonemic awareness. We don't need to. I mean, we can, but we don't need to. If we're starting really early, like 4, and they don't know their letter sounds yet, we don't put letter sounds there. If you're doing a reading remediation and you've got a child that's 8 or, around about that age bracket, then sure, put letters with it. It doesn't matter. But when we are working with reading, we are expecting a child to look at say, for example, cat again, we have the letter C, we have the letter A, we have the letter T. Now, their job as readers is to be able to sound each individual letter sound and then blend those sounds together. So you can see how that phonemic awareness skill of the secret code and blending sounds together is a direct pre-reading skill for later on, for when they actually have to start decoding when they're using letters, or when they get to start decoding using letters. Okay, so on the reverse or on the other side of that coin is segmenting, and this is a direct pre-spelling skill. So if I have a word, say I'm just gonna stick with cat, and I have the word cat. What the skill is here is to get children to segment that word cat into the individual sounds that make up the word. So we would say k-a-t, cat. So let's try another example. I'm a bit sick of cats. What about the word horse? Or horse. Let's do another one. What about, this is a bit trickier because there's more sounds and we've got an initial blend here. Drink. D, I, n, k, or unk. NK, depending on how you're going to teach it. Okay, so what we're going to do here is really set them up for spelling success, because when they want to spell a word, for example, fan, they need to be able to break that word into individual sounds and then represent those sounds with letters. So this is later on, this is their spelling. So these are the skills, if you can really start to see now, these are the skills that you must have to be able to be successful with reading and with spelling. It's a direct link. You can see how it links in, right? Okay, so the next one is we're getting into the higher end, or the top part of that ladder at the moment, is adding sounds in. So this is harder. This is going to, you have to make sure that everything below, all of those rungs, if you're thinking about it that way, are mastered. So by this time, the phonemic awareness skills in that part of that brain that is wiring speech and sound is really developing now. They're really getting it. They're almost set up for success. And I find that a lot of kids that come to me, they might be okay with all of the skills so far. They might not be as well, but some of them might be okay with all of those skills that I've just previously taught you about, except for they haven't taken it to that next level where they can actually start to manipulate those sounds. Now, if you think about it as a direct link to reading and spelling success, manipulating sounds within words is a self-monitoring and self-correcting skill. So we need to be able to, when we're reading, if kids are sounding words out and they put in a sound that's not actually there, they need to be able to have the skill to omit that sound or take that sound out and work out what that word is with only the sounds that are left. And the same thing on the reverse. So if they leave out a sound, they need to be able to put in a sound and then blend again. So this is self-monitoring and self-correcting pre-reading and pre-spelling skill that needs to be established for that success later on. So adding a sound in would be something like, okay, if we have the word sip, so we have S-I-P, sip, sip. Now, can you put in a after the s, and we have ip, slip. Okay, so another one would be also like changing sounds within words. So if we have the word skip, change the k to a and we have slip. Okay, and the last one that I'm going to talk about is deleting sounds. So this is, again, if your child is reading and they're putting in a sound that it's not actually there, really, really common, they need to be able to delete that sound. So practice the skill. So if you have slip and you take away the what word's left? Sip. Okay, so that is the crux, or a very quick version of phonological and phonemic awareness in a bit of a nutshell for you. Those skills need to be really solid if we are going to set kids up with reading success later on, or if we are going to remediate kids that are struggling in those middle primary school years, or wherever it is, really doesn't matter where it is. I'll tell you a quick story to finish, and this was a story of a little boy that I met probably about 5 years ago. And he was really struggling with reading and spelling, hugely. He really had no idea of reading and spelling, and he was just doing heaps of guessing, like just guessing everything. And as we know, guessing is really inaccurate. It's not a way to read, and it needs to be remediated. So mum ended up on my doorstep at my home clinic, and I took him in and I taught him. And when I started to teach him, I knew that I needed to backtrack so far back to the phonological and phonemic awareness. Now, I actually went into his school and I sat down with his teacher, or the specialist teacher, specialist literacy teacher that was trying to help him in a one-to-one setting. And that teacher showed me her plan or her goals that she was working on with him. Now, I looked at those goals, and it was things like be able to memorize these words, like the high frequency words, be able to read a paragraph by the end of the term, whatever it was. The point was that all of these goals that this well-meaning, beautiful teacher had devised for this child were like up here. Whereas what we really needed to do was come in down here at that base level and make his foundation really, really super strong. And that wasn't just letter sounds. We weren't even there yet. We needed to actually build or strengthen or develop, really, his phonological and phonemic awareness. So I came in with my goals, and my goals were like rhyme, words in sentences, syllables and first sounds in words. That was like the short-term goal, but I knew it was going to take a while because this child just didn't understand, didn't have any wiring yet. And so coming in with those sorts of goals was vastly different to the approach that child's teacher and that child's specialist literacy support had been giving him. And mind you, having absolutely no success. So this child was just floundering and not progressing at all. So when he came to me, we started, and you know what? I didn't know 100% that I was doing the right thing. I thought, because this wasn't a really extreme case, I thought, if I go back to the research says that we must have strong phonological and phonemic awareness. So I kind of just trusted that, and I spent lesson upon lesson with him, hour upon hour, once a week, so week upon week, strengthening his ability to understand rhyme, strengthening his ability to understand that a word is made up of a sentence is made up of separate words, teaching him how to break words down into syllables, and then teaching him first sounds, and then teaching him how to blend sounds together. I also did last sounds and middle sounds too, which I didn't actually talk about earlier, which I should have. So first sounds, end sounds, and middle sounds. Middle sounds is actually the hardest skill. teaching him how to blend sounds together, teaching him how to have a word and then segment it into individual sounds. And then I introduced letters and I taught him the letter to sound correspondences that he needed to be able to look at that letter and say the sound automatically. Look at the next letter, say the sound. Next one, say the sound. Blend those sounds together. We're reading. So knowing that I taught him how to read just by really starting off with those foundations and those basics when no one else could, it doesn't make me special. You know that the research works. We know how kids learn to read. They learn to read through a structured literacy approach, not through trying to remediate through skills that are way beyond them, or not through memorizing whole words and looking at pictures. That's not reading. We need to really follow the research. We know how kids need to learn to read. We've got 50 plus years of studies that show us how this happens. We've got the National Reading Panel who came up with the big 5 that we're going to talk about in a later episode. Phonological and phonemic awareness being the first step. We know all this. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please like and subscribe or send me some love in some way if you found this episode helpful, and I will see you next week. You've been listening to the All Kids Can podcast. For the show notes for this episode, visit allkidscan.com.au/podcast and search for this conversation. If you like what you've heard on today's episode, I would be grateful if you could take a minute to leave a rating or a review. Thank you for helping us grow and be visible to parents who can benefit from the information in this show. Lastly, if you're not already part of the All Kids Can community, sign up at our website for your free weekly newsletter, links to new podcast episodes, and up-to-date information on our offerings. Head to allkidscan.com.au to sign up and learn more.